In the middle of the 1960s spy boom, when James Bond packed theaters and secret agents filled primetime lineups, one man walked away. Patrick McGoohan was the highest paid actor on British television, the star of Danger Man. And then, he made this. A series that began like a spy thriller and turned into a psychological war he couldn't escape. Its ending outraged viewers. Its creator left Britain to escape the backlash. And more than half a century later, we're still trying to understand what it meant. By the mid-1960s, Patrick McGoohan was one of the biggest names on British television. For years, he'd played John Drake in Danger Man, a global hit that sold to more than 60 countries and made him the highest paid actor on TV. But the show's button-up morality had become a cage. Drake never carried a gun, never touched a woman, and always served the establishment without question. McGoohan was both proud and restless, a man of strict personal conviction who refused to film love scenes, yet carried a deep distrust of authority. When Danger Man's producers at ITC asked for another round, he told them he was finished. He wanted to make something different, something that would bite back at the system instead of protecting it. But Sir Lew Grade, the powerful television mogul behind ITC, wasn't ready to lose his biggest star. Patrick McGoohan's name guaranteed ratings, and Grade knew it. So when he asked McGoohan what he wanted to do next, the actor came back with an idea he'd been carrying for years. The premise sounded reckless, maybe even impossible. What if a secret agent abruptly resigns from his job, is drugged, kidnapped, and wakes up in a bizarre, picture-perfect village where everyone is known only by a number? A place that feels like a holiday resort, but functions like a prison. The faceless authority running it, known only as the village, wants one thing: to learn why he quit. The defiant prisoner at the center of it all would be known only as Number 6.
Why are you telling me?
Everyone has to tell someone.
It was your job.
It was a betrayal.
Isn't everything we do here a betrayal?
It's not often one gets a second chance.
There are no second chances.
He was pitching a philosophical battle, not a fistfight. A story about the individual versus a surveillance state. Grade, who may not have fully understood its symbolism but trusted McGoohan's instincts, reportedly gave his approval on the spot. McGoohan reunited with Danger Man story editor George Markstein to shape the concept. Markstein contributed to the show's grounding detail, an idea drawn from wartime intelligence history about government facilities used to isolate wayward agents who knew too much. McGoohan layered in allegory and paranoia. Together, they built the village, part prison, part utopia. For the setting, they chose Port Marion, a mock Mediterranean resort tucked along the coast of North Wales. Its pastel buildings and manicured courtyards gave the illusion of peace, hiding the unease underneath. It was a perfect, uncanny cage. McGoohan took full command. He starred, produced through his own company, Everyman Films, and acted as the show's creative engine. He wrote 3 episodes, directed 5, and shaped the edit of many others, sometimes under pseudonyms. It was rare for any actor, let alone one on British television, to hold that much control. And he used it to push the medium past every accepted boundary. That same control, and his refusal to compromise, would soon ignite one of the most volatile productions television had ever seen. To populate the village, McGoohan handpicked actors who reflected its contradictions, familiar yet uncanny. He deliberately avoided stars, choosing seasoned character performers who could shift from charm to menace in a heartbeat. The role of Number 2 was designed to change faces, each actor embodying a new mask of authority. Leo McKern, Peter Wingard, and Mary Morris all brought distinct shades of control, from paternal to sadistic to coldly logical, reinforcing McGoohan's point that tyranny wears many faces. What's often overlooked is how vast the show's ensemble really was. More than 100 actors appeared across the 17 episodes, far more than typical for a 1960s British series. Even the smallest roles fed McGoohan's allegory. Angela Muscat's mute butler, always present and never heard, became one of the show's most haunting symbols, a witness to power who says nothing. In its casting, as in its story, The Prisoner turned repetition into philosophy. Individuality is temporary, but the system endures. The show was revolutionary, but revolution is never tidy. Behind the calm, candy-colored walls of the village, creative tensions began to boil. The central clash was philosophical. Patrick McGoohan saw The Prisoner as a parable about freedom, identity, and the machinery of control. George Markstein, his pragmatic story editor from Danger Man, viewed it as a sophisticated espionage thriller that still needed clear answers and structure. Markstein wanted resolution. He wanted the audience to know who Number 6 was, why he resigned, and who controlled the village. McGoohan saw those answers as the enemy. For him, the mystery was the message. The moment you explained it, you killed it. Number 6, he argued, wasn't a man with a backstory. He was every person resisting the cage. The power struggle came to a head over the role of Number 2, the village's ever-changing administrator. In the early episodes, the character was played by a different actor each week. That wasn't a casting gimmick, it was McGoohan's design. Number 2 wasn't a person at all, but a position, a rotating mask for the system itself. McGoohan later explained it bluntly. There are 100 Number 2s. They're all the same. As the show evolved, its symbolism deepened, and Markstein's patience wore thin. He felt The Prisoner was drifting into deliberate abstraction, losing the procedural clarity that made Danger Man work. Within the first block of episodes, Markstein walked off the production. In later interviews, he even joked that Number 6's resignation mirrored his own. McGoohan disagreed, but the fallout left him with total creative control. From that point forward, The Prisoner became his personal crusade, brilliant, erratic, and completely uncompromising. The workload was crushing. Like David Jansen on The Fugitive, McGoohan was the engine of the show, starring, producing, writing, and directing while wrestling an impossible schedule. Filming at Port Marion was punishing. The location was beautiful, but its weather and isolation made consistency a nightmare. McGoohan's perfectionism pushed everyone hard. Scripts were rewritten overnight, and entire scenes reblocked hours before the cameras rolled. Crew members admired his drive, but many said the production ran on chaos and caffeine. Behind the camera, McGoohan's intensity became both his gift and his burden. Crew later described him as brilliant but volatile, a perfectionist who could pivot from charm to fury in a heartbeat. He rarely socialized, slept little, and seemed to live entirely inside the world of The Prisoner. That isolation only deepened as the production wore on. When The Prisoner premiered on British television in September 1967, it was an instant event. The mix of espionage, surrealism, and psychological tension was unlike anything on air. Critics called it bold, cerebral, and defiantly original. Viewers argued over its meaning, treating each episode like a riddle to be solved. Across the Atlantic, the reaction was colder. For the American market, the show was a hard sell. Lou Grade's ITC handled overseas distribution and began shopping the series to U.S. networks. The pushback was immediate. Executives thought it was too abstract, too intellectual, and too far removed from the spy formulas American audiences knew. CBS, the same network that had once backed Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone, initially turned it down, calling it too dark and too confusing. Network programmers were steering toward lighter escapism and didn't see how to market a series built on unanswered questions. Eventually, CBS reversed course, buying The Prisoner for a summer run in 1968. But the version Americans saw was not the one Britain had debated. The network chose to air only 13 of the 17 episodes and rearranged their order for scheduling convenience. Several episodes were trimmed or skipped entirely, leaving the story disjointed. What had been an intricately serialized parable in the UK arrived in the US as a fragmented puzzle, bewildering, stripped of momentum, and quickly forgotten. The US network tried to sell it as a standard action thriller, a move that completely missed its point. Posters and promos promised adventure instead of allegory. That mismatch, combined with CBS's cuts and reordered broadcasts, led to muted ratings and a fragmented response. Still, the series struck a chord with a different audience. Among students, academics, and the growing counterculture, The Prisoner became a symbol of defiance, a story about the individual against a system. But it never matched the mainstream popularity of McGoohan's earlier hit, Danger Man. Patrick McGoohan's vision was simply too radical for American television in 1968. Yet even with rejection, edits, and confusion on both sides of the Atlantic, the force of his artistry demanded an ending. And the one he delivered wouldn't just puzzle his audience, it would outrage them. Yet, even controversy couldn't bury it. In the years that followed, The Prisoner found a second life on American public television. During the 1970s and 80s, PBS stations began airing the complete British version in its intended order, the first time U.S. audiences saw the series as McGoohan made it. A new generation discovered its strange power. Students, filmmakers, and writers who recognized its questions about identity and control as timeless. By the time home video and cable reruns arrived, The Prisoner had evolved from a confusing import into a cult phenomenon. As production wound down after 17 episodes, Patrick McGoohan knew he had to deliver a conclusion, one that conventional television would never attempt. He was drained, having carried the entire series on his shoulders, but he was determined to finish it his way. The penultimate episode, Once Upon a Time, became a crucible. McGoohan both wrote and directed it, crafting an hour-long psychological duel between Number 6 and returning Number 2, played by Leo McKern. The script pushed both men to the edge. McGoohan reportedly spent a week locked in the studio filming the confrontation, driving the performances into genuine exhaustion. The toll was real. Leo McKern, who played Number 2, suffered a breakdown during the shoot and had to be hospitalized. McGoohan visited him afterward and later admitted, "It nearly killed us both." When McKern returned for the finale, their on-screen reunion carried the weight of that ordeal. The result was a claustrophobic battle of wills, a compressed, symbolic exploration of identity and rebellion. It was one of the most intense hours of 1960s television, and it was only a prelude to the chaos that would follow. Then came the finale, Fallout. Written and directed by McGoohan, it abandoned the last remnants of conventional storytelling. What began as a taut spy thriller ended as a surreal fever dream, an eruption of allegory, satire, and chaos. Number 6 is finally brought before the elusive ruler of the village, the mysterious Number 1. When the mask is ripped away, it reveals first a grinning ape mask, and beneath that, Number 6's own face, laughing back in madness. The climax plays like an act of liberation. Number 6, the reborn Number 2, Number 48, and the village's mute butler stage a violent escape. A rocket launches, the village is destroyed. Number 6 returns to his London home. Yet even that freedom feels like another illusion. The cycle has only changed shape. McGoohan's final message was both daring and damning. The prison isn't a place, it's human nature. The system isn't them, it's us. The British audience was not prepared. For months they had followed The Prisoner expecting revelation, an answer, a pattern, something to make sense of the mystery. Instead, they got an explosion of symbolism and metaphor that refused to explain itself. The reaction was immediate and ferocious. ITV switchboards were jammed with calls. Newspapers were inundated with letters demanding that Patrick McGoohan justify the ending. Some fans accused him of contempt for the audience, Others called it genius. The same critics who had once hailed the show as revolutionary now split down the middle. The tabloids turned it into a national spectacle. Reporters camped outside McGoohan's home, demanding an explanation. One headline blared, "What does it all mean?" McGoohan refused to offer one. "It means what you think it means," he told an ITV interviewer, then fled London for several weeks to escape the media storm. But time caught up with The Prisoner. What was once mocked as pretentious became a blueprint for ambitious television. Its refusal to conform, to genre, to closure, to comfort, turned it into a cult classic. Academics wrote papers, filmmakers cited it as influence. Conventions sprang up at Port Marion, where fans still gathered to debate its meaning. In the end, McGoohan's defiance paid off. He hadn't failed to explain The Prisoner, he had made a show that refused to be explained. The influence of The Prisoner is undeniable. It set the template for the modern serialized mystery. Television built around ideas instead of answers. Shows like Lost and The X-Files owe a debt to its daring use of ambiguity and long-form structure. Even contemporary dramas such as Black Mirror echo its warnings about control, conformity, and surveillance. It proved that television could do more than entertain. It could provoke, disturb, and still linger decades later. It ran for only 17 episodes, yet The Prisoner endures as a monument to one man's refusal to compromise his vision. The production was costly, chaotic, and divisive. A ratings disappointment in America and a cultural flashpoint in Britain. But by forcing audiences to confront questions that never age, who are you? What is freedom? It's achieved something far greater than commercial success. Immortality.